everyone! Okay, let's go over how to add your text and separate the shadow and use some rasterizing tools. So I'm going to choose my type tool. And then we're going to go up here and find some sort of spooky or whatever font that you want to use. I'm going to go ahead and make this a shade of red and the word scary. Now remember, scale up your font now, because you can always scale it down after we rasterize it, but you can't scale it up, because if we scale it up, we're going to lose quality. So how can we tell that it's text? The T. If we want to be able to use an eraser on text, we can't do that. There's a big no sign on here if it's not rasterized text. And it will scream at you when you click on it and say this has to be rasterized. So don't ignore these dialog boxes. Most of the time, you're not going to want to rasterize. In this case, we do. I could click OK, or if I know I'm going to do it, I could have just right-clicked in the first place and rasterized the type. Now it's not text anymore. See the difference? We see a thumbnail that shows us the words. Now I can't change the font anymore or anything because it's not text. All right. Over here, whenever you choose an eraser tool, up here's where you drop down to change your size. And then here on this gear is how you can load additional erasers. But erasers are technically brushes. Remember we talked about them yesterday, brushes. So we can import additional brushes. And I have a bunch of brushes out on the drive. Yesterday I imported several brushes, so I've got just like the land of extra brushes that are added on here. Whatever you add one day should still be down here the next day. So I added in blood brushes, Addy Splat 2 brushes, One Cracks brushes. One Cracks is like the very first one in there, so it's an easy one to grab. So whenever I click on one of these, you can see it's a very large brush. It's literally covering my entire screen. But if I'm going to erase and I want to give it a cracky pattern, that's perfect. So I'm on my layer, I'm on my eraser. I'm just going to click one time. Don't click and drag. Let me do that. Let's see what happens. Well, that wasn't too bad. You click and drag, though, it like keeps erasing. And so then eventually you're going to like run into that. So let me step back a little bit. Usually one will do. There we go. And then if you want to make it look a little different, make it smaller, or rotate the brush, which is under Window and Brushes. It's actually under Brush Settings, but it pops up with brushes. Here's where you can rotate it. So that's going to turn the direction. Like look where the tip top is up there, where that part's sticking up. If I continue rotating it, see a different part sticking up. So then if there's like an area I want to use, I can just come and use it like on a specific spot. And you can rub on it there like this in spots to just break it up more. Like so. Okay? So again, brush settings is where we can change those. That matters a lot if you're just doing like blood. So for instance, if I want to load up a blood brush, which I've already got some in here, but let me go through the process again. So click here, import brushes. Out on the Z drive, Business Tech Lab, Skinner Classes Photoshop, there's a brushes folder. I have lots of brushes. Lots. There's the cracks one. So there's a bunch of bloody ones, like blood brushes, blood spatter brush, blood brush. There's just a bunch. Let me try this one. I think this one's not on the list yet. All right. And so then when I get in here, like, oh, that's some really spattery blood. This one's very spattery. Some of them are just little bitty. Oh, there's their credits one. Some of them are just little bitty blood spatters. But let's say I wanted to have a big blood spatter here. So I could take this. Now, right now, I'm still on my text layer. So if I didn't want this to be part of my words, I would need to make a new layer. Because, you know, brushes don't make new layers, right? So, but let's say I just wanted to hang off of this Y a little bit. So I'm going to size this down. If I wanted to rotate it and make it look different, again, Window, Brushes, and under Brush Settings, rotate it around till I get it the direction I want it to be. All right, say I want it to hang off like that or whatever. Okay, here we go. And I'm just going to smack it down. I'm on erase. Now, if I'm wanting to add the blood in, I'd switch to my actual brush instead of an eraser in this case. It should still be down there because the blood brushes are still down there. And then I can choose whichever one I want. All right. No, now I got to rotate it again. Window, brushes. If anything, you should remember that after today. Okay. That's kind of, yeah, that's good. All right. There. Oh my gosh, that's a gross one. Okay. So there we go. There's my vomit blood brush or whatever that is. All right. Next, I'm going to add my drop shadow. So FX button, drop shadow. To add a shadow. Remember we talked about global light. Right now mine's unchecked. Remember if it is checked and I had multiple things with shadows, if I moved this on one, it would move it on all of them. If it's not checked, then it would only affect this one. You can also just take your mouse and pick up your shadow. I usually pick it up when I know I'm going to detach it, just so I can look at it better. But I think that looks pretty good. If you want it to not be as strong, pull the opacity back. And then, of course, you can modify these things. Don't make it like sharp. Your shadow is usually a little blurry. All right. So say that's good enough for me. Then I can hit OK, and I've got my shadow. Oops, on here. Now I'm going to put my shadow out to a new layer. To do that, we right-click where it says shadow. Not out here, over here. Where it says drop shadow, right-click, create layer. And that creates a layer from the shadow. So when I hit OK, this is now on its own layer, completely disconnected from the initial one. Then I can use Control-T, flip it upside down, just pull the top all the way down to flip it. And now I've got like the mirror image of it. And you can then right-click and change the other transform. So like warp is the one that's going to give you a lot more control, but it's going to get blurrier the longer you use it. So if I use warp, like I can do crazy stuff like this, you know, with it. But you can also move like the pieces closer to their letters easier in this warp mode. So you can grab a hold of different little pieces. But anyway, so you'd get it however you want it to be. Probably this wouldn't be the one I would use, but it's fine. Oops. All right, there we go. So once you get it like you want it, you would just go ahead and hit OK. And remember, you've got Scary and you've got Scary's drop shadow. You can always pull the opacity back on the shadow if it's too much. So yeah, and that's basically kind of the review of the things from yesterday. So what you're supposed to do then is create a layer, rasterize it, erase with a special imported brush from the Z drive. You could also smudge or burn on these. On my example that we did yesterday, we also smudged it. You probably would do this before you make the shadow, but smudge is under the blur tool. And if you're on here, you can zoom up and you can actually push pixels like so. Okay, it just smudges them like finger paint. So you can smudge it. We also talked yesterday about burning. That's the button underneath it. Dodge lightens, burn darkens. So if I go over it dark like this, we can make that darker up at the top. That looks kind of cool. Almost looks like a gradient. A little bit, huh? All right. So there we go. So you can do some of those different things there. And then, like I said, you could take a regular brush, add some blood on there if you wanted to. Or you could even do the blood on another layer. It doesn't really matter on that. Okay. So that's that.